today for Senate Education Committee. We are going to start off with a presentation on ClassLink's mission, and they are going to tell us how they're removing barriers between students and impactful education content and what they're doing already in the state of Kansas. So we have, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. How about, you guys have better voices today than I do, so I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. And you're going to need to go ahead and just kind of move that around.
Well, thank you very much for having us today. We appreciate your time. And my name is Rachel Van Auken. I am with ClassLink. I am the Vice President of Government Affairs. And with me today, I have from ClassLink, the founder and CEO, Berj Akian, celebrating 25 years yesterday, so it's an exciting day for us, or week for us. I also have with me Drew Lane, who's the Executive Director of IT at Shawnee Mission School District here in Kansas. So thank you again for your time.
Hello. Good afternoon. We prepared some remarks, and we thought we'd go through that and then sort of invite questions, perhaps even as we go along. So we're going to be flexible that way. So again, good afternoon. My name is Berj Akian. The topic that we're going to talk today about is a company called ClassLink. But really what we'd like to do is begin with you a dialogue, really, and to be a resource. So two things we hope might come from today is to share with you a little bit of what's happening in schools here in Kansas, and to share with you and be with you as a resource as you think about educational technology, primarily in the K through 12 space, but perhaps also in higher education. So this here is a snapshot of who you have here today. Again, you heard from Rachel, and that's me in the bottom corner. And we brought with us show and tell. We brought a member of the Kansas school community, and that's Drew, and he's going to share a little bit of what's happening in Shawnee Mission USD. We thought first, let's give you a thumbnail of our organization, who we are. So you heard Rachel mention yesterday we turned 25, so we're moderately grown up, I suppose, as a 25-year-old ought to be. Today we serve a little bit, well, about a third of the United States in terms of enrollment. And we're going to talk a little bit more about exactly what portion we serve here in Kansas. The number of school systems you see there is about 2,400 school systems. We do have 4 statewide implementations. I don't think that's necessarily the topic for today's conversation, but we thought we'd make mention that we do provide that service of entire states who are putting this system in. To give you more of a little bit of our organization, we are active in supporting a range of different educational organizations. I want to point out that one you see there right in the middle, Greenbush, is one of the ed service agencies here in the state, and we have a couple of years now where we have a good, warm relationship with them, whereas through their organization, we're able to serve just about every school system here in the state, and that's slowly been taking place, and we're glad to share more about that as well. We get asked sometimes, well, Berj, what is it that ClassLink does? And I have slides here, but I thought it would be more fun if I just show it to you. So if you don't mind, here's sort of a live environment. This is what a school might see. ClassLink is a software company, and the thing that we do is we provide access to resources. So here are some examples of school systems and the pages that they've created for logging in. These are some right here in the state. And I'm going to show you how easy it can be to access resources. And for that, I can put in my username and password to access it, but let's say I'm a little one, maybe in the younger grade. I'm going to use this little image here of a QR code to do this work. So watch how simple this can be. At the bottom, I'm going to click on that icon there. Done well. Hey, everyone, my camera's up. Wait for it. And that quickly, I have just signed in. And with that action, I now have access to a personalized screen of all of the resources assigned to me. So I signed in, so these are the instructional tools that are meant for me, my grade, the courses I'm enrolled in. If Drew signed in, he would see the resources assigned to him as an administrator in his school. If Rachel signed in, perhaps as in upper grades, she would see the resources assigned to her. And the magic about these is that you notice that each of the icons have little keys. That simply means that they are single sign-on. So all I need to do is click that icon, it takes me there, and it automatically signs me in. ClassLink provides this framework so that students and teachers have easy, one-click access to all of their resources. This is important because today there are not just 5 or 10 or 15 or 20. It's entirely possible that students in some grades have upwards of 20, 30, 40, 50 different websites and resources. I don't know about you, but that would be a very difficult thing for me to keep track of all of those different websites, different usernames potentially, and more than likely, different passwords. So this makes all that one-stop shop. The second thing that we're pretty well known for is the ability to provide analytics. This can be a conversation unto itself. I want to just simply say that the system provides for teachers to be able to see what resources are being used by their students and how much time they're spending on tasks. So for example, here as a teacher, I'm going to come in, I want to see how much are my students using the system, and at a glance I can see the different classes, and I can see the number of students that are signing in and the time that they spend. These are all the students in my class, and I can see how much time they're spending. And if I click on any one of these students and potentially any one of these times, I can see what it was they did for that time. So imagine this level of awareness and insight in the hands of the teachers, and then roll that up to central office. So the power of providing students usage to teachers, and then the utilization roll up for the administration as well. Those are the things that we're probably best known for. I thought maybe I would take this time to invite Drew, comment a little bit about how Shawnee Mission is using this system, and then we can continue the conversation as well. Sure, is that all right?
So about 3 years back, we were really...
Can you go ahead and introduce yourself for those that are listening but maybe not seeing?
Well, thank you. So my name is Drew Lane. I am the Executive Director of ICT for the Shawnee Mission School District. I've been there about 9 years now. About 3 years ago, we were looking for a way to make our education resources more efficiently available to students and teachers, reduce the amount of time we were spending in the technology team in getting resources available to students and teachers, and find a good balance between usability and secure logins, and then tack onto that a way for us to troubleshoot those apps when they maybe weren't working as we thought they should, or were giving us issues, or to just see, you know, what's the level of use of those. And so the first kind of point on that is around this concept of rostering. And really all rostering is providing the teachers and students with the credentials they need to access a resource. Sounds pretty straightforward. Until you're trying to do that for potentially a couple of hundred different applications in a large school district, or even small school district who may have several dozen. Getting those credentials to students, having those students matched correctly with the teacher, and then having the teacher have access as well is part of the rostering process. Prior to our use of this platform, that was by and large a very manual process. We could do some exports of data out of our student information system, those types of things. But another component to rostering that makes it better with this is that each one of those vendors sometimes has their own template for the way they want to receive that data. Rostering through this platform allows us to streamline that. The rostering system in ClassLink takes care of handling that templating for us, so that it did dramatically reduce the amount of time the technology team was spending on these types of tasks, so we could reassign that work time to other tasks. But probably even more importantly was it dramatically reduced the amount of time it took for us to get teachers and students connected to each other and then connected to these resources. Once you have the rostering done, then of course you want them to be able to get into those resources. We are all familiar with using a username and a password. And in today's world, good password hygiene means that you have a different password for everything, right? I'm not going to ask anybody to raise your hand if you're not doing that. Probably we got about a 50-50 chance of everybody in this room is or is not doing that. But when you're talking about very young students, kindergarten, first, second grade, third grade, how do you have them use passwords when they're still learning the alphabet itself? So that was a challenge to try to overcome. And if that isn't difficult enough, then we know that good password hygiene includes things like complexity in your passwords and longer passwords. How do we anticipate having a first grade student have a 10-character password that's complex and not driving the teacher crazy when it's that student and 29 others in the classroom who can't remember their password that day? So what we've been able to do is, as a part of that piece of this platform, is we use quick cards that you saw demonstrated. We still allow manual input as our students progress through. Sometimes it's good for them to learn to use username and password input manually, so that we still allow that. But I think the most interesting piece for me is that we also allow shorter passwords for those younger students, because we can also apply multi-factor authentication to those accounts. And that second factor for those students is a picture that they recognize. Doesn't require them to use Duo or a device or get a push prompt or anything like that. They're just shown a picture on the screen, and if it's the correct picture or they select a picture, depending on which device they have, it allows them in, and that's that second factor. So we had rostering. We wanted that balance between secure logins and convenient logins, and then the third big component for us was the analytics. As a technologist, I'm most interested in figuring out why things aren't working as quickly as possible and making them work again, and we use the analytics in that fashion. But then as an administrator or a classroom teacher or central office staff member, you can use the analytics to see which applications, which resources are being used, how often, and potentially to what effect. So by and large, those three things, those were the challenges we were looking to overcome in our school district, and we were able to successfully do so in use of this platform.
We thought we'd share with you a list, if you would, put the screen back up. We thought we'd share with you a list of the other school systems that we're working with. I believe this is the very latest. And you can see there, perhaps, some schools that you know personally. Notice the statistic on the right-hand side. Today we serve a little over 40% of the students here in Kansas. Interestingly, that statistic does not reflect the same number of USDs. So we only serve 10% of the school systems here in the state. I think that's because we serve disproportionately larger school systems. And so we are able to serve a greater percentage of the students rather than the school systems. We've been reflecting on that, and we think there's something to be taken away there in terms of, it seems that the larger school systems perhaps have resources that the smaller school systems don't have, because we're able to serve them more easily, more directly. They're able to find us as a technology solution, perhaps. We'd love to be able to serve more of the smaller school systems. Perhaps they're also more rural, but it seems like it doesn't come naturally. So maybe that's something worthy of discussion to figure out, because I think what you at least saw demonstrated is something that all students should have, regardless of grade or whether they attend a large school system or a small school system. Some of the benefits that you heard Drew speak about could be very beneficial regardless of the size of the institution, but it seems we're certainly slanted here. I have some information here about how we serve statewide, and I thought those might be instructive for you. And so for that, I'd like to share the story that you see here of two in particular. I think I have all four here, but I'll start with these two. The interesting thing about the work that we're doing with states directly is that the gaps that you saw statistically in terms of the number of students versus the number of school systems, that tends to play out for us in other states as well. And when we look at that, it seems that the states have decided there's something that they could do to help close that gap. And sometimes what they do is they engage with us to have a solution for all the students in the state so that the students and the teachers can have what you saw regardless. And so we end up working with those states so that they can have this kind of resource. You see here the different catalysts for that can be different. So for example, in Iowa, they had library resources that they wanted to make sure that all students and teachers in the state had access to. A portal like what we demonstrated to you today was able to do that. In Delaware, they actually had an existing portal, and the thought was we should look to upgrade that solution, and so they looked to us for that. Also in Delaware, there was a challenge with the rostering, and this is what Drew was describing, in that there's so many resources that need to receive information from the school systems that they struggle doing that on a scale at the state. And so they brought us in, and now we have been able to do that for them. Next two states, state of North Dakota, theirs was pretty similar in some ways to the situation that we're seeing here in Kansas. They very definitely saw gaps in that the smaller school systems were lacking the staff, the resources, even sometimes the awareness of this kind of technology. And so what they chose to do was to contract with us so that they can, through the state technology department, work with the small school systems so that they could have the same benefits that some of the larger school systems have. That project is underway, and I'm pleased to say it's going very nicely so far. In Georgia, similar to some of the other states, they had an existing state portal, and what they wanted to do there was make sure that they could upgrade that portal for all the security items that you heard mentioned also. Multi-factor authentication and different ways in which systems can be accessed from different types of computers, not just desktops and laptops, of course, but mobile phones, which of course is now the more common way of accessing resources online. Those are sort of the end of our prepared remarks. We thought we'd leave time for dialogue and questions and things like that, or to hear more from Drew, perhaps, of what's actually happening in Shawnee.
Okay, we'll start off with a question from Senator O'Shea, and then we'll go to Senator Straub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation, for being here. Can you show us a little bit of the platform when students get on there and what they're doing there?
Oh, I'd love to. So I'm going to go back to the screen here. And so let's say I've signed in. So often, I'm going to take it from the lens of a student and from a teacher. So let's say I'm a student. First day, lots of things going on. If I'm giving a tool like this so that I can instantly sign on, if I'm a little one or perhaps a student with some learning challenges and I want to be able to get in real quick, all I have to do is hold this in front of the camera. And what's here has been a curated list of resources that are assigned to me by virtue of the grade that I'm in, by virtue of the courses that I'm enrolled in, by virtue of the school building that I'm attending, because all those aspects have resources assigned to them, and the net effect of it is that I see this constellation of different resources. And what's great about this for me as an individual, if you allow me to, I can personalize this. I can take this icon, I can put it over here, I can take this, put it over here. And you think this doesn't sort of add up to a lot? It adds up to a great deal, because what you're allowing the students to do is to personalize their experience. And what we have found, and research has proved this out, the more you allow me to personalize it, the more I align to it and I want to use it. So we're actually wanting to drive that affiliation, that affinity between the student and teacher, for example, to this resource. If you allow me, I can put things in folders, take this one, put it over here, put it on top, just like my phone, put it in a folder. You can see here there's a whole folder of resources, and this library resources, one that I especially like, because if you know education, you probably know that there's so much being spent on library resources, some resources generally, that go underutilized. They're generally underutilized because nobody knows they exist. Here, they're right on my screen, one button away. I click and I have access to it, and I'm able to do that from any device. You see, I'm doing it from this laptop, but I could just as easily come up to one of your computers there, go to a website, hold the card in front of the camera, and your computer would be just as powerful and effective a tool for me to learn as is this computer that is in fact my own. So this idea of having a personalized experience becomes very, very powerful. Also notice, now let's say I'm role of an instructor, a teacher, or staff member, I have access to other resources here as well. So this is about productivity across the organization, having access to all these different resources that go beyond just the instructional resources. Does that help a little?
Senator Straub.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. This is totally my wheelhouse. I have both publicly virtual schooled my children and privately homeschooled. I've used many of those apps, so I can see a huge benefit of being able to log into many applications or websites at the same time. However, that does create a slight security concern for me and a privacy concern. I know that many of those websites and apps are free services. So my question is, do you sell this as a service to the school district, or is this at a cost per student?
Yep. Good questions. So firstly, with regards to, let me talk a little bit about the security and data privacy and things like that, which I think is a great point. I'd like to show this particular slide here, actually. And, sorry, it's not letting me. I'm going to find the slide, but what I'd like to share with you about the security is that the system does not come preloaded with all of those resources. The schools, in fact, select those resources, and we believe they should use good judgment and choose vendors that have reliable data security with them. And one of the things that ClassLink does in an exceptional way is that we do a number of third-party audits of our own security so that we can provide confidence to the schools that we serve that ClassLink has in place all the necessary safeguards for data security. We do not remarket any of these resources. These are resources chosen by the school system. And one of the things that I think makes our solution exceptional in this space is that our system allows for the administration to not only make those decisions, but to specifically prevent rogue applications from being added to this environment. And that becomes an important factor as we get into modern environments where there's lots and lots of free resources out there, and perhaps a draw to use those resources because they're so easily available. You can just Google something and find something. But what we've found is that the school systems we work with, and perhaps this is partly why they could be more successful with this, they've used this as a disciplined approach to make those intended selections of resources and make those intended resources more easily available. If you make intentional decisions and make the access to those intentional resources more easily available, what we have found is that you're lessening the need to go off and discover some free resource that nobody knows anything about, that hasn't gone through proper review and things like that. So this actually helps those school systems ensure that they're using good governance, good policies for review, and only put on here the ones that pass those tests. And now that they're easily available, we're finding that school teachers are more apt to use the ones that they're intended to use and less likely to just open up a Google browser and find anything on the internet. Does that help?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my main question was, do you sell this as a package to the school district or individual cost per student?
We sell it as a suite and we price it as a per student. And that price ranges from $3.80, something like that, down based on volume. So the bigger the institution, the bigger the volume break they get on that. One of the things that I mentioned earlier in my remarks, we have a relationship with Greenbush so that we could create really a volume purchasing for many, many districts in the state, which gives purchasing power to the smallest of school districts. And we did that intentionally because we want to make sure we're reducing all friction possible for the little school systems to come on board.
I have Senator Petty and then Senator Dietrich.
Thank you very much. So I will follow up with that. You mentioned Greenbush. So, and we saw that list of schools. So Greenbush is using it, or Greenbush is, if for those districts that are working through Greenbush, they then have a less expensive access to it, or because of the volume?
Yep, good. So I don't know that every one of these is purchasing using the Greenbush discount. Think of the Greenbush as a coupon. So it's really a purchasing discount. And we did it through them because they wanted to have that, and so we were grateful for that. I think some of these might be purchasing outside of that consortium just because they purchased ClassLink long before that Greenbush relationship came into being.
Okay. My first question was going to be, when you showed us you're accessing, so for a student, is it facial and badge?
It can be. We actually have a couple of options there in terms of the ways in which they can sign in. Here you can see at the bottom there's facial recognition. I have to say, I don't see a lot of schools doing that. I think it was exciting when it first came out as a new technology, and now I'm seeing schools sort of moving away from that. What I find they're using more often is the one that I demonstrated for you, the use of these cards. That's pretty popular, super easy to do. I have a fancy one here printed on plastic. I don't think there's a school out there that does it that way. I think what they do is they print this out on paper and they laminate it, so it's really inexpensive to produce. And so that's pretty popular. And then, of course, multi-factor. So I don't know whether or not you all have that in your daily lives, but imagine it's the circumstance where I type in my username, I type in my password, and then it says, press something on your phone, type in the thing that I just texted you. Of course, we're not doing that for the children. Those are more the staff and administration.
Thank you. Senator Dietrich.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Very informative. What about connectivity? You know, some of our smaller districts that are in rural Kansas may have some broadband issues. Have you bumped up against that?
It definitely comes up. I'm glad you bring that up. I know that there's work happening here in Kansas, some great things actually happening just in the last few years to sort of rectify that, bring access to more rural places. I know there's initiatives at the federal level with new funds that have been put in place. I don't think we're done. I think there's good connectivity at schools. However, I don't think we have the connectivity that we need in home. And as we all know, that's a super important place if we want learning to continue outside the school classroom. We need broadband at the home.
May I ask a follow-up?
You may ask a follow-up.
Mr. Shawnee Mission person, Drew, can I ask a quick question?
Shawnee Mission.
He's going to go back to work tomorrow with a new name.
I'll respond to that.
So how much bandwidth does this use in a district your size? Does it cause problems with other applications that you need?
So as an accomplished IT person, I will give you the standard response, and it depends. Okay. But to be more specific to, in response to your question, depending on what resource is being accessed and what content is being displayed or interacted with, it will vary. But like many websites today, even streaming video has become quite efficient, especially in the arena of education resources, because generally speaking, you're not streaming 4K. There's really not a need to stream 4K. So the footprint of this on the district's internet resources is definitely manageable. Yes. Excuse me.
Are there any other questions? Could you please share with us what is available? You've identified what's available for students, what's available for faculty and administration. How do parents fit in with this?
So I shared a little bit about that experience that looks like this. We can go back to the slides, thanks. So I shared a little bit about this experience here. So again, this is my personalized screen with all of my buttons. Now I could be a student, I could be a teacher. We have a version of this, which we call the parent portal. And that version allows for a screen like this to exist for the household. And what would be the value of that? Well, that allows for the parent or someone at the household to be able to see the buttons that might be assigned to their students. It also allows the parent to be able to see other buttons. And what might some of those buttons be? Well, let's think about it. If I'm a parent, I want to be able to see my grades of my own students, of my children. So I'm going to be able to see my grades. I'd be able to see attendance information. I'd be able to see school menu, school lunch. I'd be able to see the system of record where I go in and I prepay certain things. The school forms might be there as well. So all of these different resources that as a parent, perhaps even communication tools intended for me to communicate directly with the teachers of my children. So all of that could be available in a version of this blue screen that we call the parent portal. So that's available as well. The neat thing about that, not only for all the reasons I've described, the ease with which of having a single button access all of those resources, it also allows for to be able to do that without any additional cost. We actually don't have an additional cost for the parent portal. That's free as part of the system. I'll make one more point about that parent portal. And what we find is that schools that implement this kind of technology, there's sort of a maturity model. They begin first with making a screen like this available for primarily the students and the teachers. And then they generally move on to administration, because this makes life easy for any human being, having access to all of your resources with one click. And then there's a maturity model where they allow for the parents to have access to this portal. So I think there's sort of a wonderful maturity model there that we're seeing happen in so many different school systems that we work with. And it's playing out similarly here in Kansas as well. And I think when the students have access to resources more easily, they use the resources more. When the teachers have access to those resources more easily, they use it more. And what we're finding is that when parents have access to this information, they tend to access it more as well. And so we're creating these pathways to increase the communication, access to information between the household and the school. And interestingly, this can become a vehicle to enable more of those pathways. Because if you think about it, this screen here with all its icons represents some universe of resources that exist at this moment in time. Tomorrow, it very well might be that someone goes to some conference, comes back and says, I've discovered this wonderful new resource for teaching chemistry. We should think about using it. And they go about that, and they think about it, and they decide they want to start using it. They easily add it to this screen. Now, access to that new resource is not burdensome. It's not oppressive. It's just another button on the screen. Not much different than all of us when we refresh our phones and do an update, and suddenly there's a new button icon on there. It's really not off-putting to us generally. We just see the new button and we wonder what it is. This becomes a vehicle for schools to be able to do something similar for students, for teachers, and for parents. And the interesting thing about that last group is that it can be very oppressive for a parent to be told, oh, there's another website that you have to go to for some other resource that's difficult to manage. This can become the conduit to be able to make those resources, evolve those resources, and make them easily available.
Burge and Rachel, I thank you for being here, and happy 25th anniversary.
Thank you so much.
And Drew, we certainly, so Mr. Shawnee Mission expert, we thank you for being here and giving that input as far as what's happening within a school district in our state that's utilizing this. We certainly appreciate your participation today.
Thank you.
Now, we are going to move on to working on the budget, so if you are wanting to pack up your things and exit stage right, you're welcome to. Committee, we are now going to turn our attention in our deliberation to the Kansas State Department of Education budget. So I think, JG, would you mind going up there and giving just a brief little overview and answering any questions that the committee might have?
Does everybody have a copy of the budget analysis? I think I do have a couple available if we need.
Sorry. It's on the S drive of the website also, if you're needing it.
Okay. I will be really brief on the explanation of the budget. Once again, it's the same budget analysis that you've seen previously. If you go to page mine says 7, but this one says 919. You'll see what the agency requested. It will start off with the approved. They started off with $4.5 billion in state general fund. All funds was a little over $6.6 billion. There was some reappropriations of $5.9 million. And the total budget adds those up. In the revised estimate, this is what the agency changed. You'll see virtual math, where there's a reduction of SGF of $4 million, an increase of special revenue funds of $4 million. That's a shift of funding for the virtual math program. ARPA funding was available, so they spent the $4 million there and lapsed or gave back the $4 million state general fund. And then the rest of those are around additional federal funds, COVID-19 funding that has come in and went directly for those specific programs. They did eliminate 12 FTE positions that had been vacant for a while and weren't necessarily being planned to be filled. The governor's recommendation approved all of the adjustments that they had submitted in their budget and made adjustments for the consensus revenue estimates. I say revenue because that's my habit. The consensus school finance estimates, which reduced the SGF by about $65 million. There is a more detailed summary of the programs that were adjusted, numerically tied to the chart. On page 923, it's the same information for 2024. There will be additional enhancements in this section. $76 million, the 5-year program for special ed funding. The professional development at $1.9 million. The mental health initiative team pilot added an additional $3 million. The mentor teacher program, they requested $1 million. And the same with the Safe and Secure Schools grant. In the children's cabinet, there was money added for parents. Nope, that's not in the children's cabinet. That's further down, I'm sorry. Parents as teachers was added some special revenue funds. The ag in the classroom, they requested $35 million for that, and the conservation and environment programs. in the children's cabinet, they added, they requested 2.9, almost $3 million for an increase in the block grant. They had requested $1 million for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. The governor's recommendations, based on the consensus estimate, the amount that was projected for special ed over that period of time dropped from 76 million in the original projection that they had requested down to $72.4 million. That's the reduction that's shown in this. The governor also did not recommend the conservation and environment nor ag in the classroom projects. When we go down through 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, those are once again the consensus estimates for the school consensus estimates. And you'll see that there's a difference between these estimates and what they had originally requested. The original request was made in September, and the estimates were made in November. So that's the reason why there was a difference in those estimates. And the other is, and we talked about this earlier, the reverting back to the capital improvement demand transfer from a revenue transfer. The total amount is zero impact. It's just how it's shown. The original was, as is recommended here, was to show this as a state general fund expenditure, and that's what this is reflecting, and that is the statutory formula that's supposed to be used. What had been done previously, and it was in the budget for 24, was a revenue transfer. So they took the money, same amount, the $205 million, instead of showing it as an expenditure, they took the money out of the revenue portion before it gets to the expenditures. So it reduced the total amount of state general fund revenue available by the same amount and showed it as a special revenue fund where it shows as an expenditure. So overall, there's no impact to the state general fund or for the program. And the rest of those enhancements that the governor did recommend all but those two and the adjustment for the special ed.
Okay, committee, we're ready for our work on the deliberation of this budget proposal. So what do I have as far as motions? Okay, questions. We'll go with questions. So we'll start. Senator Erickson, then Senator Sykes.
So thank you, JG, for that. I just have a clarifying question on the recommendation for special education funding, because the governor's recommendation is basically $4 million. That's an adjustment in the $76 million. She's recommending $72 million, not the 76.
Correct.
All right, I just want to make sure I have that clear. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question, and this is probably for other committee members or maybe JG. I know when they were looking at the commerce budget, there was $1 million line item in some child care that there was discussion that that would be better served under the Children's Initiative Fund. Does someone know if that has already been taken care of in another budget or if we should address that in here?
There has been some conversation about us making a statement since no additional information has been presented to this committee, but that we include that in a statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so next I have Senator Straub had her hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is on page 17 on our budget, where the governor does not recommend funding the agriculture in the classroom. I would like to see that included, but I would also like to subtract that $35,000 from another department or section of the budget, but I'm not sure which.
Okay, so now we're into motions. So is there any feedback from individuals as to where that funding might be drawn from? I think that you have a couple of options, the professional development area, and what was that amount again, JG?
The professional development was 1.9 million.
So that would be a resource if that's what you would like to have for your motion.
That would be great. That, I assume that encompasses the mentor teacher program? No?
Mentor teacher program, the 1 million mentor teacher program is separate.
Okay. I'm not, either one, I'm not opposed to including that in either one of those budgets. Does that make sense?
What you need to do is make a motion, I believe, and perhaps Tamara could best advise us, but I think you're talking about funding the one and reducing the funding for another.
Yes, exactly.
So I need you to pick your
Madam Chair,
poison.
I would move to include the Kansas Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom in the amount of $35,000 and deduct that amount from the mentor teacher program.
Okay, do we have a second on that? Senator Petty, you second? Okay. Did you have a comment? Okay, go ahead, Senator Petty.
Yes, I'd like to make a substitute motion to fund the Ag in the Classroom, $35,000 as an addition, but not as a subtraction for anything else.
Okay. So we have that substitute motion. I am now needing a second on the substitute motion. I have a second on the substitute motion. So the substitute motion is for funding the Ag in the Classroom. And so what it really is it's increasing the mentor teacher funding to include 1.035. Is that correct? You said you didn't want it a reduction, you wanted it to be in addition to.
Right, but that's not an increase to the mentor. The mentor position is already, the mentor program's already in the budget, so it's not increasing what's already in the budget. It's just maintaining what's in the budget. The increase is $35,000.
Oh, just separate, okay. I stand corrected. Yes, Senator Gossage.
Thank you. I just am trying to clarify. So it says agriculture in the classroom, but it's not really going to be in the classroom. This is for professional development, right? This is for teachers to go to a professional development program, right? So I just want to say
Senator Straub, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do, that's the way I understand it, is that $35,000 is for training and incorporating agricultural topics into the classroom. On the budget on page 16, they're all listed under professional development enhancement requests, and the governor did not recommend item 2 and 3, which was the Ag in the Classroom and the conservation and environmental education. I'm recommending that we include the Ag in the Classroom, but deduct that $35,000 from the mentor teacher program.
We have a substitute motion that we're working on right now. Yes, Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be opposing the substitute motion to go back to Senator Straub's motion, because I believe her motion is the motion I would support. So I will just be opposing the substitute motion. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments about the substitute motion? Do we have a second on the substitute motion? We do from Senator Sykes, that's right. Yes, Senator Petty.
Thank you. My reasoning is that, and I've had the advantage or the disadvantage, I don't know which is, being on Ways and Means, to look at other budgets, and we're talking about which I see a value for additional professional development of $35,000 money, and this was the original motion that the substitute motion is taken, was to take that from the 1.9, but professional development is so important statewide in all of our schools, and so I would hate to see that we would be reducing that to that amount in any way, whereas now we're enhancing that professional development by the addition of the agricultural. So I think one of the things we probably heard today, too, was about how important mentoring and training is. I heard that when I went to listen to a presentation from the hospitals about how important leadership is, and the same is true of their schools. So I think we should be looking forward, not backward.
Senator Dietrich and then Senator O'Shea.
I know we're running short of time, but I had a question about the mechanics of this. So the 1.9 million that's in professional development right now, and this may be an agency question, is distributed across all districts. Yes or no? Isn't that correct? Okay.
Head shake is yes.
So if you were to insert an additional 35,000 anywhere, whether you, just for ag professional development, I just need to know, how would that be managed? How would it, 35,000 isn't very much over 286 districts. I just don't know how it would be managed. Is it better to be, if you deduct it? Yes.
Madam Chair, John Hess, Director of Fiscal Services for KSDE. The way this used to be in the budget and the way it was handled, it was sent out as a grant to the Kansas Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom.
That answered that.
All right. Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had planned to make a motion to just not recommend number 4, the enhancement of the mentor teacher program. So maybe we could just vote and then continue with cuts.
Okay, I see that call for the motion, or call for the action. So all those in favor of the substitute motion, say aye. Opposed? No. It does not appear that it has passed. So we will now go to new motions. Or back to the original. Yep, we're back to the original motion.
Madam Chair, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, so now we'll go to, I will go to my vice chair, Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and this may simplify things or complicate them, I don't know, but
It's the Education Committee, so we'll complicate it.
The enhancement requests for professional development, mentor teacher, the ag program, mental health, safe and secure schools, those are all above and beyond the full funding from Gannon. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
And next year, they're getting $364.2 million additional SGF in automatic increase per Gannon. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact figure, but the base will increase, yes.
So, Madam Chair, my question is, why are we, if we're fully funding schools, they're getting additional $364.2 million in SGF. Why are we funding additional professional development and $35,000 for ag? To me, we have already funded that and then some through SGF increase. And so my motion would be that we do not fund any of the enhancement requests. That is my motion.
I have a second. I have a second from Senator O'Shea. Okay. Any additional conversation or discussion? Senator Petty.
Well, I'll just say, if you look at any other budget of any other agency, and they all have enhancements, and varies by the agencies, and I guess that the Education Committee is saying with this that they don't believe that any of these enhancements are important and or should be a part of our funding for public education. And I think that's short-sighted and definitely doesn't match anything that we've been hearing from presenters.
JG and then Senator Erickson.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. The special ed was not addressed directly in Gannon. It said that it was not as much of a problem to invalidate the entire formula.
And I have an additional motion for the special education funding separate from the enhancements. that
Okay,
we're
I just
talking about
wanted
here.
to make sure
I
that,
do have a separate motion for the special education funding.
So at this point, I will now call on Senator Erickson. Did you have an additional
sorry.
comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. No, I do have a separate motion for sped funding. Thank you.
So we've, yes,
I'm just asking a question here. So we're hearing that, one, there's a motion to remove all enhancements.
we have a motion and a second, and then there were questions, and JJ asked to clarify. I got an indication from Senator Erickson she wanted to comment. She went ahead and commented. I didn't call on her. So we're back on the questions or comments, and Senator Sykes is next for that.
Oh, mine is a question about the motion. So we have a motion, we have a second.
Yes.
Now we have a discuss, or a comment that's based on one of these enhancements. So I'm just trying to understand. We're going to vote out, but we might vote something in, type thing. I guess that's
We do
part of
that all the
process.
time.
Not really.
Senator Sykes.
Can I get a clarification? Is it the top line, that's the senator's recommendation, the 6.7 billion? I'm on page 923. This is,
Senator Erickson.
My pages are different, so I'm sorry. I have like pages 16, 17, so I'm sorry I'm not following.
can you give me the dollar amount that you are?
Page 11.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
I have 4 different packets and they're all different. Yeah. So I guess to
Well,
clarify.
doing my math, okay, and for clarification, Madam Chair, we can remove number 1 because I have a separate motion for that. But if I'm looking at the 1.9 for PD, the 3 million for mental health, the 1 million for mentor teacher, the 1 million for safe and secure, the 35,000 for ag in the classroom, and 35,000 for conservation. Those are the ones I am making a motion currently to remove. And I'm sorry, I didn't add those up, so 6.97 million.
Okay, then I guess for further clarification, there are other enhancements that are through the special revenue funds. Are you leaving those in your motion?
Yes, the special revenue funds, I'm leaving in my motion. Correct. I should.
Only those items that were listed. Are there any additional questions? Senator O'Shea.
Thank you. This might be for you. Can you remind us how much money over the past 3 years or so we've gotten from the federal government because of COVID ESSER funds?
You're talking money that just went to K through 12?
Yes. Just a rough estimate, it's fine.
Mr. Hess, please come forward and just stay up there while we work through this.
Madam Chair, Senator, about $1.5 billion.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments on the motion? Senator Petty.
Of that $1.5 billion, how much went to the State Board of Education of that, and how much then went out to school districts for them to determine individually how they would use those funds?
So 1.5 billion is the total amount of that specifically for ESSER. That's all the pots of money. So it's a lot of different things. Most of that is ESSER, and of ESSER, 90% of that was awarded to school districts. $1 billion-ish, 1.1. I'd have to pull it up, the numbers exactly, but something like.
And school districts also received some county money and so forth.
Yes, and in other areas, yes.
All right. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. It passes. So we are on to the next motion. Senator Dietrich.
Mine is an easy one, I promise. So last week, we had a presentation about a weighting adjustment. You all got a nice, beautiful binder here. So I would like to make an amendment to our, it doesn't really cost anything in SGF at all. This is all local funds. Do you have the amendment? No? No? I'm the only person that has the amendment. Okay. So what we are trying to do here is what you heard last week, which is change the weighting. That's a local district cost. It's moving that weighting from it's a cost of living adjustment for some districts in Kansas who have a higher valuation of their property. So it would be moving it from 5% to 7% and changing the eligibility factor from 25% above state property value average to 15%, and then just attaching an ongoing weighting related to the CPI going forward. So it's something that a local district can do if they're eligible and the voters would allow it. So JG,
JG had it looked like he had a comment.
This is a budget bill.
And this is a policy bill.
Oh, and this is policy.
And that would be addressing the actual formula itself. And I'm not a reviser, but I mean, I think that would start getting into a little gray area.
Go ahead and give us your thoughts.
If this is a change that the committee would like to pursue as a permanent change to the formula, I would recommend a bill to do that, because anything in the budget bill is temporary.
So I think the recommendation would be you have an RS number.
Yes.
Please introduce it to Fed and State or to tax, and let's go from there. Okay, any new amendments? Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would recommend that we take the special ed funding of the governor's recommendation of the $72 million to be reviewed at omnibus.
I have a second, or a motion from Senator Erickson, a second from Senator Straub. Are there any questions on that motion? Senator Blasey.
Just clarifying, I think is it 76.8 million, not 72 million?
It was, oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Senator Erickson.
It was revised from the consensus revenue and reduced by 4-point-something million, which made it the 72.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion passes. Any new additional amendments to what's before us? Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I think it's so crucial as we continue to enter into the 21st century that we continue to invest in STEM careers, just get STEM education. And so I'd have a motion to create the STEM pilot program, and I was just told that there's nothing in writing, so I'll have the reviser please read my motion or my program.
So the information I have would state that in the STEM pilot program, the State Department of Education would issue a request for proposals for the 23-24 school year for $2 million to purchase from a vendor a chemistry and physical science 3D game-based learning platform for middle school and high school students. The platform would align to Kansas science standards, connect the standards to real-world technologies and applications, and highlight STEM and CTE career pathways.
Are you making any recommendation of reducing funding anywhere?
Is this on? There it is. Sorry, the light wasn't working. I would just add it to the budget as an additional. I believe investment in STEM education is very crucial. As we all know, young Kansans are more and more glued to screens, which is not a good thing, by the way. We need to work on that as well. But, however, that is the generation that's being brought up. And so when they play with these games, their minds are working this way, and we are falling further and further behind China and other countries across the world. And I believe it is time that we start adapting a little bit, and that's why we'd like to create this pilot program to test it and see how we can, how kids begin to perform better in STEM fields.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second from Senator Straub. And so two hands that I saw up, first Senator Gossage, then Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concern about this is I know that there are some school districts that have already invested in programs that are working on STEM. I'm not so sure this is something the state should do. I think there are lots of curriculum out there for states to have an RFP to put out that the state is somehow going to purchase or work with or have a contract with a particular program or whatever it may be. I just don't think that should be our role.
Senator Petty.
I would just actually support exactly what Senator Gossage just said. I would say that I think Senator Blasey, this actually could be a piece of legislation, which would definitely be important to have presentations and hearings to know exactly what's going on in our school districts, because I'm sure you have children and they're starting their careers in the elementary schools, and so you should be aware that there are lots of efforts that are going on throughout the state in different ways. And just as Senator Gossage said, it certainly is a local controlled decision, and I think what I'm seeing is that there's lots of efforts being made. So I would hate for us to go down this path of thinking there's only one way to do it.
Senator Straub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think from the presentation that we saw earlier today that learning is not one size fits all. Teachers are not one size fits all. There are countless programs, applications, websites, tutorials. I really like this idea of creating a STEM-specific program because, as Senator Blasey said, we are so far behind. And I can tell you, I've looked at countless curriculums as a private homeschooler, and some are much better than others. I think that the state needs to definitely get on top of this issue because we are falling behind. So I fully support creating a STEM program. Thank you.
Yes, Senator Sykes.
I will be opposing this, and I think as someone who did not vote for the motion, which stripped out a lot of these enhancements because the comment was made that this should fully fund our schools, but then we're adding this in. So I think it's contradictory to what the majority voted for, so I will be opposing.
Okay. Very quickly, I just got a text from leadership. They want us up.
Where are you guys? Okay, I'll just say very quickly, in all due respect to Senator Straub, I feel like she just made my point, in that one size does not fit all, and I think that there are lots of different programs out there, and school districts can decide which ones works best for them. Thank you.
Senator Blasey, you may have the last word.
I just want to stress this is a pilot program. This is not something for every school district. It's not every school district has the means as some districts in Johnson County and elsewhere. So I believe this is a program that will allow students to pursue these careers in other parts of the state. Thank you.
I think you might pick a few other counties, but we'll let that pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The chair is unclear. I need a show of hands. All those in favor, please, hands up. Okay, those opposed? Okay, the motion fails. Committee, I now need a motion to pass out the budget for the State Department of Education. Okay, so moved as amended. Second by Senator Erickson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I do need a show of hands. So all those in favor, hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. Motion passes. We are adjourned.